On the Slugfest, Opto Beam is always blocked. Ramp never finds itself. Replace the Optos. Same result each time. It works for a few games and then stops working. Now I'm just getting a constant beam block message. See my notes for everything I've done to try and fix this. Hey, this is Big Al here, the pinball guy, and I'm trying to rebuild the Slugfest game. One of the problems I'm having is my ramp. Ramp doesn't go high enough when it turns and doesn't turn all the way a lot of times. So that's a couple of problems here. One seems to be with this part here. This is the cam. This goes round and round. And if you can look here, there are some slots and holes in the cam. And Williams used a pair of Optos to sense the position of the cam. So if you look here, white one's the transmitter Opto, and the black one's the receiver. You can still get these online. Some stores online still carry those. Not sure that's my problem, but as long as I was going to remove this mechanism, I was going to go ahead and replace them, which I have. Also on the end here, this little cam piece here is still available. I replaced that. I was worried the old one might have been worn down, and that might have been the reason why my ramp, when it did rise, did not rise high enough. Over here on this side is the motor mechanism, and they seem to be fairly reliable. I did lube the motor gears with some Teflon gear grease that I had left over from my model train collection. And then here on the end, I added a connector to make this easier to service. So in the game, if you're working on a Slugfest, this is hard soldered in, and the only way you can get this assembly out is to keep desoldering these two wires here. I decided to add a connector instead. I don't know why Williams didn't do that originally, and makes the assembly easier to remove from the game to do the work on. So we're going to reinstall this back into Slugfest, and we're going to see if the motor cam turns and if it now rises the ramp up all the way. Okay, so in the last video you kind of saw what I was dealing with here. The ramp switch isn't registering. So this is where we have to learn how to read the schematic. And I broke out the wiring diagram and the matrix schematic that Williams provides in the Slugfest manual. And what's not registering is this switch here, switch 55, which is the ramp switch. Now the way switch matrices work is you have a column here, green, black. That's the column, and that is number 5. So that's column 5. And then over here, you have the row, and that's going to be a white green wire, which is the row. A couple things you got to notice on this game: there are switches on the play field, and there are switches in the cabinets, such as the buttons on the control panel. The ramp switch that we're having problems with is on the play field. So this row does double duty. It services the cabinet and the control panel, and it services the playfield. And that's going to be very important to remember when we look at this. So if we go back here and we look at the column, you have the ramp switch. It also switches works with the pitch home button. That's the pitcher. The strike trough, and the back row trough. So these are the switches when you hit a ball and it goes through the playfield and lands in the trough, it triggers these switches here. And these all work. So I'm leaning to say that the column is not my problem. So let's look at the row. So you have the target panels on that, the screwball pitch, the steel base. Those all work, but they're not on the playfield. That's a different wire. So the only other connection here is this one. Target panel third right. And when I look at that, I seem to remember in the games that I've played that that target doesn't always seem to register. So you have two targets that would be on the same row. These all work, but they're not on. They're on a different wire because they're in the cabinet. They're on that control panel. So I'm wondering if I got to trace back here this connector. If I look up here they give you another look at it. This is J208, and all of the rows are on J208 on the MPU board. And the one in particular we're having trouble with is row 5. So row 5 is going to be this white orange wire here. Now, one thing I did find out, it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 on the print. That's a typo because there is a key. Key is pin 6. So it really should be 7, 8, 9. This is a 9-pin connector. So Williams, I'm going to call your complaint line. You made a mistake in this drawing 20 some odd years ago, 25 years ago. So let's fix that. All right, so what are we going to do here? So what I did, I went to the board. Here's that connector here. If you look very carefully, I pulled it off. I looked very carefully, and these wires appear to have some battery acid damage. What Williams does on their MPU boards, they put batteries on the boards. So you get an old Williams game and you got batteries here, that's bad news. What happens is the batteries were intended to preserve the memory, but over time people would forget about them. Maybe the game would go into storage. If anybody's ever seen an old battery lying around, they leak after a while. And of course the acid drips right off the battery and gets on all these parts here. So what I did, I actually replaced this board. I bought another board online and I sent it to a tech to fix. And first thing he did for me was he changed out, there's a chip up here that the batteries were supposed to protect the memory on. He put in what is called an NVRAM. That stands for non-volatile. That's an industry name for a non-volatile. That's a RAM chip that'll remember all the game settings without needing a battery. So we pulled out the original chip that was in there that needed batteries. I put in an NVRAM. If you've got the soldering tools, you can do it yourself. Since I'm a little bit older, my soldering skills aren't as good as they once were. I sent it to my tech buddy I met online, and he replaced the chip for like 50 bucks. So he's a pro, he's got the right tools, and he changed that out. So I don't need the batteries anymore. But the connectors were not replaced. We assumed that replacing the board would fix all this, which it did, but you got the original connectors, and it looks like the battery acid may have got in there. So what we're going to do is we're going to replace these connectors. I went online to DigiKey, and I ordered brand new 9-pin connectors. The other thing I want you to see is these are what we call insulation displacement. You'll hear people refer to the IDC connectors. What there are, they're like little blades in there, and they would use a tool to shove the wire in, and the little blades on the end of the connector would cut through the insulation and make contact with the wire. A great labor saving in the factory. They had a tool. They didn't have to strip the wire. They didn't have to put ends on it or anything. But in the long term, they fail. They're not good. So when you go online to buy replacement connectors, these are KK types. They usually come in 1/10-inch centers or 254 millimeters, and the other one is 156. Those are the larger ones. You can get these online, get them in the right size, and don't forget to order the key. The missing key in the drawing. Don't forget to order a key, because for leaving a key out on a replacement connector is death. So I ordered those online. Down here you'll see my tools. I have this was left over from my days when I worked in the pinball business. I actually have a commercial grade crimper, but you can buy an inexpensive crimping tool. And here are the crimps here that I bought. I bought like 100. Not very expensive. All of these, I bought a pack of 10 new connectors, 100 crimps. All in, it was under 20 bucks plus shipping. There are places that sell this stuff without shipping, but learning how to crimp and learning how to replace connectors is going to be a skill you're going to need to pick up if you're going to work on the pins a lot. And we'll try to do another video on that later on. So I'm going to finish replacing these wires here. One by one, I'm going to remove them from the old connector. I'm going to double check them with the schematic, make sure I have the right color, and I'm going to position them in here. I do them one by one so I can, this time 9 times, check my work. This case, these are switch rows, so if I make a mistake, the worst case scenario is a bunch of switches are going to be not working right. If you ever do this on a power supply, you have to triple check and quadruple check, because getting a wire or a key wrong on a power supply connector that you're replacing could be death. So that's where we're at right now. And with the next video, we're gonna try to fire it up on the next video and see if we fixed it. Yeah, okay. Finished replacing the connectors, and here they are right here. J208 and 209. One services the playfield, and the other one services the cabinet and the control panel. See, these are all brand new. Here are the old IDC ones next to it. Well, these have been crimped and installed. So now we're ready to run some tests on the Slugfest game. So here's my playfield. A couple things we're going to do here. First of all, underneath the front left is the switch, so I'm going to go ahead and power it up. The game will go through a quick self-test check. You know, so the lights look a little bit brighter. That's because I did an LED upgrade. I think it looks a little bit better. But now we're in free play mode. So what we want to do, you come down here to the control panel. So if you've worked on Williams games before of this era, you get to be good with these buttons. So the button here on the right puts the game into test mode. So I'm going to go ahead and hit it. When I do that, it launches a quick self-test. With the NVRAM in there, the one thing the NVRAM will not do, it won't store the dates. So if you're operating this on location and you want to get records as the dates and how many games were played and all that, you're not going to get that with NVRAM, but it will remember all the other settings. So I'm going to go ahead and push the test button one more time. Now it puts me into the main menu. So down here, there's a button here called plus, and a button here called minus, and an escape. So what the plus button does, it advances you through the different tests. So hit plus, there's your printouts. We don't have a printer installed, but some arcade owners would have a printer and they plug it in. We're going to ignore that. Now we're in test mode, so I'm going to go ahead and hit the enter button. And the first test that comes up is switch edges. So I'm going to go ahead and hit that with hit the plus button. Excuse me, switch edges. You don't hit the plus button because that'll take you through more tests. So I'm just going to hit the enter button again. And now, when I press the switch, so for example, let me go through the control panel. So I'll hit the fastball button, and it says fastball. So you want to make sure, if you've done a wiring change like this, that all of the switches match. That's the screwball. Here's the player 1, player 2, pinch hit button, and then the steel button. So those are good. So that was the cabinet, and they were all working before, so we didn't mess anything up. So now we're going to do the playfield, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do these targets from right to left. So that says target right, right. Second from the right. Here is the one that was flaky before. Third from the right, that's working. Medium, middle. Third from the left. Second from the left. And left. So all of my switches work. So that's good news. So it doesn't look like I messed anything up with the buttons. Now I'm going to go back into the test mode. I'm going to hit the escape button. And now that takes me back out to my select. So I was in switch edges. Oop, hit the wrong button there. Hard to hold the camera and hit the right button. Switch edges. Switch levels. This one will just tell you, because some switches are normally stuck. So switch levels will actually give you a little chart and tell you which switches are normally stuck. Pitch opto, ramp opto, that's good. Bleacher. Ramp opto was the one that was giving us trouble, so that's good. So this test is for switches that are normally supposed to be closed. So let's get out of there. And we got, this is for testing a single switch. We're not worried about that right now. Solenoid test, we'll go through all the coils. Flasher test, we'll test all the flash lamps. And this will turn the lights on and off. Sound and music, single lamp test, all lamp test, lamp and flasher test, display test. Here we go. Here's the ramp test. So let's go ahead and hit the ramp button here, and this will give us an idea. Okay. Unblocked, ramp down, ramp up. So you notice how the ramp goes down and up, and look where it says opto beam. So while the ramp's moving, the opto gets blocked, and then the computer senses the ramp is up and it opens up an opto. So what was happening before was would always say opto beam blocked, so it wasn't reading the ramp opto switch. So what we have happening here now, we replaced the connector and we're running the self-test. Now if this was the factory, I'd just walk away and go on break or lunch and let this thing run for an hour or two. But I'm impatient and I'm going to play some games. But this is what you want to see on the ramp test. You want to see the ramp moving up and down, and you want to see that message briefly change from blocked to unblocked, which is what it's doing now. So we'll play a few games, and if all's well, we'll come back and do a little more videos.